Now, Marriott is one company aggressively and drastically expanding into Africa. The hotel chain is also capitalizing on the steady growth of China. CCTV's White House correspondent Jessica Stone sat down with Marriott CEO Arne Sorenson to explain.
Our story starts in Africa about 35 years ago with the Cairo Marriott. We've been doing business in Egypt and loving Egypt for a long, long time. We've got projects in Tunisia and Algeria, and North Africa is a very comfortable, familiar place to us. Sub-Saharan Africa has been a much newer experiment for us, I suppose. And starting maybe 5 to 10 years ago, we really started looking at development. The markets that were coming on soonest for us in organic growth were Rwanda, Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Kenya. And we were committed to Africa, really thinking that it was a place of opportunity, growing middle class, growing economies, need for travel. We thought hotels would be successful.
Let's talk about Marriott, now the largest hotel chain in Africa, with the acquisition just this spring of Protea, which was already on the continent. How did that allow you entrance to the market and give you the ability to increase your capacity?
We gained 120 hotels, 80 of them in South Africa, but they're also in Namibia and Nigeria and a number of other markets that we hadn't been in before. And so that immediate distribution was a huge part of the deal. The other thing, though, that was really equally important is we acquired African leadership with real expertise and familiarity with the market, who can come in and run not only what Protea already had, but can come in and run the hotels that are in our organic pipeline, can help us accelerate our growth through most of those markets, and bring us an expertise which would have taken us many, many, many years and lots of money to try and build ourselves.
You talked about the lack of local expertise and needing that. When we think about the space that you're in, tourism, hospitality, do you think that's a barrier for other companies across the space?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the great things about our business, and maybe one of the challenges, is that our jobs are local. You can't export your hotel room. And so when we open in Kigali, we'll have a hotel that has 200, 250 associates working there. 99% of them will be Rwandan. Our travelers who come into Rwanda to experience that market want to experience that place. And experiencing that place starts with experiencing the people who live there.
You have been part of the development of this company in other developing markets. Talk to me about how Marriott's expansion in Asia and China compares to the experience that you've needed to get into the African markets that you're in.
Yeah, it's a good question. These markets are all so different. I mean, you can look at demographic data and sometimes see similarities, and the similarities will be about the GDP growth, relatively higher rates than the developed world. It'll be about the growth of the middle class, which is hugely important to travel. But beyond that, the stories are very, very different. The societies are different. Human resources may be different. So you look at a place like India, as an example. India is filled with people, 1.2 billion, 1.3 billion people, something like that. Many, many, many million have great English language skills. They are fairly easy to get into our hotels and train and get at. There's no real language barrier. But they've got infrastructure challenges which are every bit as intense as many of the infrastructure challenges in Africa.
Can you speak specifically to the business in China? I know 2 years ago you announced you would double capacity there. Have you done that?
Yeah, we have, and momentum is actually continuing to build. So even though the Chinese GDP numbers are a little bit more modest than they were a few years ago, we're seeing that Chinese middle class travel more within China, travel more outside of China. We're seeing that the need to develop in the secondary and tertiary markets is creating more and more opportunities there. So we add Shanghai, for example. We are the dominant operator today. We run about 23 hotels in the city of Shanghai. We continue to open hotels in Shanghai.
How important are these emerging economies to what you need to do globally?
Emerging economies are huge, and they're huge both because of the growth of those economies themselves, and we want to be there to make sure that we can participate in that growth, but they're equally as important for the outbound travel that comes from those markets. So if you go back to China, China's statistics in the last, let's say over a 10-year, maybe 12-year period of time, will go from 1 million annual outbound travelers. They've already crossed 100 million, and when I was there a few months ago, they were talking about 500 million annual outbound Chinese travelers. If we can be in China with our brands, serving mostly Chinese guests in China, but also developing familiarity for them with our brands, it means when they come outside of China to the United States or to Europe or someplace else, they'll hopefully look for our hotels and we can welcome them there too.